It doesn't matter what kind of e-commerce brand you're building, you still need a rock-solid way to grow and scale your company like clockwork. Welcome to Seven Figures and Beyond, an e-commerce marketing podcast for D2C brand owners and marketers looking for best practices that include proven strategies and tactics to grow an e-commerce brand to 7 figures and beyond. Bringing 18 plus years of marketing experience as an e-commerce brand owner and e-commerce agency owner, please welcome your host, Greg Shuey.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Seven Figures and Beyond e-commerce marketing podcast. I am your host, Greg Shuey, and I created this podcast to help D2C business owners and marketers who are stuck and who are really seeking ways to get out of being stuck and to grow their businesses. Today, my guest is Izzy Rosenzweig. I got that right?
Perfect.
I only practiced that like a zillion times as I was clicking start recording. So Izzy is the CEO of Portless. And if you have not heard of Portless before, they are a next-gen 3PL. And 3PL stands for third-party logistics.
Nailed it.
Did I get that right too?
Nailing everything right now.
They help consumer product companies like you ship orders directly from manufacturers in China to customers worldwide. And what this does is it helps you cut out warehousing and intermediaries. This model reduces shipping costs, improves cash flow, and minimizes inventory risk through just-in-time fulfillment. This is a very, very timely topic because the world is in chaos. Well, maybe not the world, but the United States and direct-to-consumer companies, we're in chaos right now, honestly. Like it's a day doesn't go by where I don't talk to someone who is almost on the verge of tears about what's going on. So you can probably guess that we're not talking about marketing. You know, we're digging deep today. So tariffs are killing brands. We're going to dive into how companies like yours can free up cash flow by keeping inventory levels low. Deferring tariffs, didn't even know that was a thing. Tariff engineering, also didn't know that was a thing. I've never heard of that before, and so forth. So I'm really hoping that you can find 2 to 3 nuggets of wisdom that you can take from this by the end and execute on in the next week or 2 to help ease the pressure that you're feeling right now. Wow, that was a long intro. Izzy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited.
Yeah, super pumped. Before we get into the meat of our conversation, can you just take a few minutes and share a little bit about your personal story and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I actually started as a brand. So going back to 2012, I started an e-commerce business. The first 2 years of that business was running it through the traditional supply chain model, which is really hard on cash flow.
Sure.
That I experienced myself. So I was manufacturing in China and Vietnam, and I would put it on a boat, and I would always be waiting. So most of my cash be tied up to the inventory that I'm trying to sell.
That's sitting on the water.
And it's just sitting in the container somewhere in the ocean.
Yeah.
And another byproduct of it having long delays was I needed to order inventory, not for a month later, for like 6 months later, for like 4 to 6 months later. So I'm doing all these crazy predictions like, hey, how many t-shirts do I need and what colors? And I think blue is going to be the best color of the summer. So it's really hard.
Hopefully it's blue.
Yeah, exactly. And you're usually wrong. And a TikTok reel comes out and it's actually orange, right? So but that's the nature of the game. And it's a really hard game. And it was really difficult. So the first 2 years, we did, about 100,000 of revenue the first 2 years. But then I got very fortunate and I met some early Alibaba executives in 2014. They introduced me to what we call the direct supply chain model. And what that is essentially is instead of putting your product on a boat and waiting and having tons of inventory at a time, store the goods in facilities near the factory. Yeah. So let's give an example. If your product is done on May 9th, if I were to put that on a boat, I would be waiting probably to the end of July, early August to get it.
Sure.
Versus if I use a local facility, that product be ready to be shipped by May 10th or 11th. 2 days versus 2 months.
Ready to ship, meaning
to the end consumer.
And to the end consumer.
Correct. So we moved that model. We moved goods into our facility that we built out. And And this way, when a customer makes an order, we could pick, pack, have that order delivered on average 6 days across continental US. Local experience. The consumer sees USPS scanned in Chicago, delivered in wherever he is, scanned in LA, delivered in San Diego. So consumer gets a local driver, local USPS label or on-track label delivered to their customer's front door. Normal experience. But as a brand, it opened up everything us. It removed the pain of cash flow. Yeah. And essentially, for my business, I went from $100,000 to about $2.5 million, and then I grew no outside capital, and I grew that business to about $45 million over the next couple of years, 100% growth year over year. Then what happened was, and we became experts on the China side, on the air cargo side, on handing over to last miles, on localizing it. You have no idea it came from any country, from even Vietnam and China. You think it's just from a consumer perspective, it's local labels, local scans, etc. Then if you're marketing, and I used to do a ton of marketing, attribution, ad set level, ad level, right? You get pretty granular there. And we spent millions in marketing. But then Apple privacy update came around and they said, nope, we're going to mess up your attribution. So we went blind for a while because we were very heavy on Meta. Yeah. Back then, Facebook. And so we started to slow down that business. But we were experts on the supply chain side. And we've been doing this for, at this point, close to 10 years. So we started to offer the supply chain side of our services to businesses. And that's the founding of Portless. And now we service hundreds of American brands. We no longer run a consumer business. We are just the logistics arm, helping other brands essentially use the same model. Don't put stuff on a boat, send it to us. We'll massively improve your cash flow. You can lower your inventory needs. You can restock within seasons. If you got a product killing it on Meta, don't sell out. Restock when it's hot in the season. That's what Portless does. And that's how I got it.
That's amazing. That's a huge problem that you've solved. I'll bet you find more fulfillment in that than you do in running a brand.
100% fulfillment, pun intended. So it is because what happened was, well, running the brand, I was able to experience a lot of pain, what other brand owners feel. And for me, I guess fulfillment in what we do is we can make brands healthier. Like, the demand is there, right? There's $200 billion of purchases in the United States, and even much more, a lot more globally. But so there'll always be entrepreneurs that will fill demand. But that method of fulfilling that demand is extremely painful. It is so hard. But if you can use a model like this, where your consumer has the same net result, and you could run at a fraction of the cash needed and always free up cash flow, it's game changing. It takes off burdens off their shoulder, and it feels great.
It's amazing. Well, let's talk about cash flow issues. I mean, a lot of brands are feeling the squeeze right now. What are the most common cash flow issues that you're seeing amongst 6, 7, even 8-figure e-com businesses?
It's interesting. When a company starts a business, usually cash flow is not the biggest deal because you're not at scale yet, right? Like you're doing 50, 100, 200K. All right, you're moving around money. Once you get to, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, all of a sudden there's millions of dollars out the door, mostly in inventory. Yep. And what we say is that place is not, if you're not smart about managing inventory, you're going to have money stuck. You're going to have excess inventory. That's not only bad for your balance sheet, it's also bad for your P&L and hurt your profit margin. So in this model, you could move to a smaller batch manufacturing where historically maybe you would make 25,000 shirts because you needed 6 months of inventory. Make 3,000 shirts of every color. And then as you're getting orders, you're going to realize, oh, the blue t-shirt sucks. It's the orange one or it's the yellow one. And this way you're avoiding excess inventory. You freed up all that cash because you don't have 25,000 units per color. And you're investing in the SKUs that matter. And you're getting cash out really quick because you're investing and 2-3 weeks later it's done and you're making those POs before you sell out, but you're getting restocked really quick. Yeah. And therefore you're having cash in smart places in the best SKUs, the winning SKUs. So that for me is consistently when you're at that size, outside of your day-to-day OpEx of your employees, most of the time the money is just sitting in very often dead inventory. And that is a bad place for money to be.
That is a bad place. Yep. It should be in your marketing and in your demand gen engine. Yeah. Okay. So could you walk us through really the connection between inventory management and cash flow? Like, what are the smartest ways brands can reduce inventory without compromising sales? I know we've touched on a couple of those already, like running smaller batches and those types of things, but I've got to believe that there are a few other things that, we're not thinking of.
So one of the things that, again, I actually started to do this towards the end of when I was building a brand, my business would start to scale. Very often you go to a factory and be like, hey, I want to make this t-shirt. So again, the Portless model, you can make much less of it. But let's just say you're not on the Portless model. You have a retail store, so you can't use the Portless model. So then the factory will tell you, well, we want 25,000 t-shirts. So very often people will say, okay, 25,000 t-shirts. But we have to ask the question, why? Why does the factory want 25,000 t-shirts? Like, do they literally have a machine that only makes 25,000 t-shirts? Usually the answer is no.
Of course they do. That's all that machine will do.
Yeah, it's like this weird new mechanism. So usually what it's connected to is raw materials, because in order for them to get the best deal in raw materials, they have to buy a certain bulk load for a price. So one of the things that we did really successfully was, hey, most of the value of when I pay you for a t-shirt, let's say it's $10, $8 of that is in the labor of making, the machines, the putting together the raw materials, not the actual raw material itself.
Yeah.
So you and therefore your lead time, which they say 3 weeks, 2 weeks is getting the raw materials. So we had a lot of success saying, hey, Mr. Factory, let's do this. We'll lay out the money for the raw materials, $2 on the t-shirt. So let's say you're laying out 20% of what you're about to lay out.
Yeah.
Allow those raw materials to either sit in your factory. Maybe we'll pay you a little warehousing space for it. And then start producing in a much more agile level. You could get lead time from 3 weeks to 10 days or even 7 days if you lock up the raw materials, which is the reason why they said they need the 25,000 orders. So we did that really successfully.
And the factories are okay with that.
100%. And now I would say even more so, the factories over the last 5 years have really started to turn a corner on being more agile in how they produce and how small they produce at time. Yeah. 2 reasons. One, Shein has taught them that if you get into agile and you're open to being more small batch based, you find winners fast. When you find winners fast, you don't make money in the small batch. You might even lose a little bit of money or break even. But the winners drive, your marketing, right? You have a winner in marketing. You have unlimited. It's a big world out there. Yeah. You can scale really hard, and factories are seeing that. They're getting it. Yeah. And I mean, especially with the tariff rules, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But in general, even in China itself, there's loosening demand. So because they had a real estate bubble there. So factories in general are more agile and be willing to be, creative on how to get you what you need.
Adapt or die, right? Cool. That's brilliant. I think that right there is a huge takeaway for most people who are listening. And I know a number of people I need to send this to today. So yeah, like for sure. Okay, let's talk about these two terms that I am completely unfamiliar with: tariff deferment and tariff engineering. Again, this is legitimately the biggest topic of discussion with prospects that I'm speaking with clients that I'm speaking with. And walk us through those. What are they, and how should a brand take advantage of those?
So let's first talk about a brand that doesn't do any strategy.
Okay.
And I will, before I start, the brands today have 2 paths to go. They could go the way they're going before, not optimize, not do anything strategic. They'll probably go bankrupt.
Sure.
But the brands that the entrepreneurs that double click in every strategy and every opportunity, you will gain market share. Because competitors, if they're not being smart, will gain their customers. Yeah. So 2 paths here. One is, let's talk about a typical brand that is not doing any optimization. They buy $1 million worth of product from their factory. They put on a boat. Once it gets to the US, remember they're buying 4 to 6 months at a time. They need to pull out their checkbook and write a check for north of $1.4 million today.
Sure. Yep.
That's insane.
It is.
Most brands. It's bananas. Most brands will either refuse to claim it, and they'll force it before they'll come after you eventually. Yeah. Or you write that check, and you'll probably go bankrupt from cash flow. It's an impossible place, unfortunately, that brands are put in. Now, that is people that are not doing anything smart. Tax deferment in e-commerce, at least for Portless, we could support you. You don't need to pay taxes up front. So you have that $1 million of goods. Don't put it in a boat. Put it in our facilities in China. It will sit there.
Yep.
No taxes due.
Yep.
Then you make an order. So let's say day one, you have 10 orders. You only pay the taxes on those 10 orders as they cross the border. Keep in mind, you already collected the money from the customer. That $10 is sitting in your bank. Those 10 orders, the revenue is in your bank. So now you got the money to pay the taxes. Again, it's a different P&L play. It's a balance sheet play. But that is game changing. And the brands that are doing this, and this is why, our inbound has been insane lately, because the brands have no choice. Like, you got to be smart about the way you're running this, or else you'll have so much cash in the CBP and the Treasury, you won't be able to run your business.
Yeah.
So that's tax deferment. You got to pay your tariff, just don't pay it day one, because that will break the bank. Tariff engineering. Tariff engineering is actually around for a very long time, but a famous example given many times is Converse shoes. Converse shoes, they add felt to their sole. Over 50%. 51% of the sole has a little bit of felt. You probably don't notice it and it rubs off. But by adding felt to the sole, it is legally classified on an HS code level as a slipper. And slipper.
Really?
Yep. Everything is technical, right? If you pass a technical test, your HS code is technically different.
Okay. So my Converse I'm wearing right now is a slipper. Got it.
Legally. Yes. Legally it's a slipper. It looks like a shoe. Feels like a shoe. Legally it's a slipper.
Okay.
And the base tariff is closer to 6% versus 30%. Again, it's reciprocal on top of that, but your base is lower. So that is an example of what do you need to change about your product to make it more tax efficient. Now, maybe the answer can't do anything, and that sucks. Or another example our trade lawyers gave us was they had a company that started with a microwave. But then they got a little more sophisticated in that product, and before they knew it was an air fryer. Well, do an audit, because maybe the HS code on the air fryer is lower taxes than a microwave. So understanding your HS code, making sure you classified it right to begin with, and then getting creative, like, hey, what do I got to do? Maybe I could take something away. Maybe I could add something, change the blend of the material. So that's an example we're seeing people do that.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Wow. Last
other thing I'll throw in there that we're seeing brands doing, which is to me shocking. So at Portless, most of our business is US, but we have about 40-50% of our business globally. We could take one inventory hub and we can ship it to Australia. We can ship it to Canada. We can ship it to UK. We can ship it to Germany. Yeah. All 5-day delivery, 5-6-day delivery for most of those markets, localized, Royal Mail, Australia Post.
Yep.
We're seeing American businesses starting to put their ad dollars in global markets. It is easier to do business today in Europe than it is in the USA. That's a wild statement to say.
It's insane. We've been having conversations about like Mexico, right? Like building ad campaigns and selling in Mexico. Like it's sad. It's sad that it's easier to do business outside of the country right now.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And we're seeing entrepreneurs do it. Like entrepreneurs will adapt to where it has to go.
Yep.
So, in the marketing side, CPMs are cheaper in the UK.
100%.
It's an incredible conversion rate and cheap CPM market and great e-commerce market. So there's definitely a lot of interesting moves we're seeing.
And if you have your 3PL in China or Vietnam, it doesn't matter where you're shipping. You can ship it worldwide. Yep. Wow. Okay. That's a very interesting thought. Sell outside of the country until this mess is cleaned up. So walk us through, like what's the best way for brands to manage and build like the strongest relationships with their vendors? You've already talked about a couple of them, buying inventory on their behalf and storing it, but like, I've got to imagine there's a half a dozen things that they should be doing just to make sure that, they're locked arm in arm and there is no chance that they're going to get fired. Right. And it just makes for a positive experience for both parties.
Every brand I talk to usually have an amazing relationship with their factories. Like they're really good people, hardworking and constantly driving to make stuff better.
Yep.
So we've seen an interesting trend and we are seeing some people move to Vietnam and some people move to India. Yep. We have Portless Vietnam. We're opening Portless India in Q3. So like we'll support the transitions, but moving is risky, right? You move to a new factory, the QC, the raw materials, the delay of fabric mills.
And it takes forever to find them too. You've got 100%. To be on site with them and touring facilities. It's a beast.
It's a beast. So what we are seeing an interesting trend, if you're big enough, we're seeing factory owners in China opening up entities in Vietnam and building their factories there. If you're a big enough customer. because those guys know their business.
Wow.
They do quality control. They know exactly what needs to produce. There's a ton of Chinese-owned factories in Cambodia, in Vietnam, and they're one of the best operators. They're just so good at what they do. They've been doing it for so long. So if you're big enough, have that conversation with your factory. Maybe they're willing to open up and operate in another country, and that's fine. It's all
what does big enough mean? I mean,
I would say if you're doing north of like 10, 20 million, it might be worth to do it. Like the factory might be worth doing it. If you're under 10 million, I don't know if your factory would do that.
Sure.
But it's a conversation to have.
Sure.
The next thing is we've seen some really interesting relationships between brands and factories around payment terms. Okay. So if you ask very often, it's like 30% up front or 60% up front, 40% on delivery. We're seeing people with 90-day payment terms. Now, I have noticed a lot of those people are doing it through trade partners. So you have trade partners in China that sit between the factory and the consumer. Now, they add value. They might do QC for you. They might do photography for you. They usually add value. But very often, factories in the business of making things, trade partner can add services and solutions. We're seeing trade partners being able to work out interesting financing solutions to extend terms. And we're seeing a lot of interesting results over there as well.
Interesting. So help me understand a trade partner a little bit better. They sit in between the D2C brand and then the factory. Yep. I didn't even know that was a thing. I assumed a lot of brands work directly with the factories. And so very
often they think they do and they're not.
Oh, okay.
So depending on the brand and depending on the relationship with their factories, there is obviously a margin got to pay to the trade partner.
Yeah.
Some of them are ridiculously expensive and not worth to use, and they usually work with like smaller brands. But the bigger trade partners, they take a certain percentage.
Yeah.
But they add services. So they'll find, like, if you work with one factory, maybe you find another factory to diversify yourself. A trade partner finds all the different factories, and they're making sure that everyone's competitive.
And they are in China
they're in China, offices in China.
They have those relationships so that you're not flying out. Got it.
Exactly. They'll do the QC for you. They'll do photography and kind of added services. And those guys, they will work on financing partners in China. So you can have a 60 to 90 day lead time. That is another thing. Like if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
Have those conversations. And then B, maybe look for a trade partner to that could be a little more creative in how you finance the inventory.
How small is too small of a brand to work with a trade partner, do you think?
I think there's different size trade partners for different size brands. My assumption, brand new businesses is harder to find a trade partner, or they find like basically a contractor that's like contracting out as a trade partner. Yep. But usually the larger firms, my assumption is you got to be doing at least $1 million of revenue. So you're big enough that you're
so not great for startup mode.
Not great for startup mode.
Unless maybe you're venture backed and you have deep pockets, right?
Yeah, or your business is big enough. You're very often you're starting Alibaba, then you'll test it. It's good. But once you start scaling, then you can get a little deeper in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to throw another thought or question in here. I hope I don't catch you too off guard. How does this work with Amazon? I mean, do you work with Amazon sellers?
Great question. So we don't do FBA. So most Amazon sellers are FBA sellers.
Sure.
You got to have the goods in an Amazon facility. We do FBM. We could do FBM. We could do FBM globally. We could do FBM UK, FBM Australia. But we don't do FBM if that's like your side business, personally Portless, just because we have minimums, right? So we could do FBM. We obviously can't do FBA because we're not physically inside a Amazon facility.
Yeah.
But let's just say if we have your DTC business and a part of that is FBM all the time. We do Walmart, we do Target, we do Macy's.
Oh, interesting.
We'll deliver in the SLAs of these marketplaces. Yeah. And then we can help you actually expand to other countries, right?
It really doesn't matter. You plug in and go. Got it. Okay. So in your experience, if you could pick three, what are the three quick wins that an e-commerce founder can take and implement in the next 30 days? It could be some of the things we've already talked about. It could be things that maybe you just, haven't shared yet.
Yeah. The conversations I have, it's really about surviving the next couple months till the trade war settles. Yep. Because trade wars don't last forever. There's already conversations are going down. Just optimize wherever you can. Yep. So on our end is look at your inventory. Try to be really agile with your inventory. Try to get cash out of your inventory. If your model could fit in a Portless model, you might want to check that out.
Yep.
anything you can to reduce your cash into dead inventory. It will free up so you can live another day. It's oxygen for business. You need to have oxygen. 2 is look at global markets. It's time to look at global markets. Like if you're marketing on Meta, if you're marketing on Google, it's a really big world out there. US is really competitive. Now you have high CPMs in the US, but you also have high tariffs. Maybe work with your marketing partner and say, hey, could we test out Australia? You don't have to change a word on your ad. Speak English. You test out Canada. I don't know why Mexico, we got to do a lot of translation. You got Canada, you got Australia, you got UK, New Zealand. These are great markets, cheap CPMs. And once you have a winner, you can scale really aggressively. So it's a big world out there. Usually most entrepreneurs in the US have a hard time looking outside the US.
Sure.
But this should be your time to do that.
I love it. Okay. As we wrap up, this one may be a little bit of a longer answer, but if you were brought in to help a 7-figure D2C brand that's profitable on paper, but tight on cash, which is not uncommon, what is the step-by-step playbook you'd follow in the first 60 days?
First is just look at OpEx. I'm a big fan of globalization. Like how much of your OpEx is needed locally versus not locally. It's your poor team. You could probably build a team in the Philippines.
Sure.
Engineers. Brazil has great engineers. So unfortunately,
marketers. Like there are global marketers. There is amazing talent in Mexico. Amazing. Like you don't even have to go to the Philippines or India to get.
Yeah, it's a big world out there.
Yeah,
it's just
crazy.
Near like, and I'm a big believer in partners too. Like find an agency. Do you need a full-time marketer behind a desk? Find an agency that could give you that scale without the need to lay out that money. So tighten up the OpEx to as efficient as possible. Then I look at inventory. Where's most of your money? After OpEx. Usually it's inventory. What can we do different here? Can we apply raw material strategy? Can we work with a trade partner, with the factory to negotiate better terms? So OpEx from a P&L perspective, and then really get good at the balance sheet, because most times it's the balance sheet that put people into bankruptcy. Yeah. So reduce the inventory, get more agile with inventory. Those are the 2 places I would work the whole time. Tightening OpEx and opening up cash through usually inventory.
Amazing. All right, sir. Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, just get through the trade wars. We're almost there.
Just hunker down.
Just hunker down, get through the next 2 months. And if you can, I think there's opportunity to gain market share once all this settles.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate your time today. I know that there's at least a dozen people I need to send this to as soon as it's live. So it's amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. Great conversation.
Thank you. And to all those listening, thank you for joining, and hope you're able to join us next week.